the December 19th, 2018 date. I wasn't there.
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and second to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Okay, so item number 6.
Mrs. Chair, we're videoing our meetings, so if you could just speak into the microphone, so everyone else is getting captured.
All right. Sorry. Item number 6, Board of Architecture Review, application BAR 1901, City of Seaside, requesting design approval for the installation of fencing upland and landscaping to screen the monument sign at Metz Park at the 1500 block of Military Avenue. Staff?
Good evening, and I'm going to sit during this presentation due to my health challenges. I'm Gloria Stearns, your Community Development Director, sitting in for Rick Medina tonight. But it's my pleasure to present to you the Metz Park project, which also now has a new sign, Rubio Field, naming the baseball field that's present at that field. This was a project that was done to honor our mayor our former mayor who did a long-term service as mayor, but also as a public servant on many boards and commissions throughout the community. And so the city decided to honor him by placing a sign that measured 12 feet by 6 feet in the park. By the time we got done adding borders around the sign, it added up to 13 feet, and the exact measurements will be on a slide that I have coming up in the future. But just to give you an idea, it's a very large sign. And so the city has the right, via the sign code, to place signs in public parks, which we use that as an option to place the sign. But now we would like to place landscaping because the sign just seems like it's a giant sign that's been plopped down in the middle of an open space, and we would like to make it fit more contextually. So tonight we're here to talk about the proposals for landscaping. There will be a planter built underneath the sign. So it'll be a wooden planter built underneath the sign, and we're looking at a couple of different plants, and we would be looking for the bar for guidance on which plants you would like to have in the planter, as well as then some trees next to the sign itself. And what staff is recommending is possibly 2 trees on either side of it, because this is a very large sign. So maybe one of the trees could be something that grows to be fairly significant in scale, and then something a little smaller, more at a human scale, so that way it sort of brings it down to eye level a little bit nicer. One of the questions that's up for discussion tonight also is a fence. So across the property of the north end, let me go through the location. First of all, this is the location of the park on Military Road, and we're talking about the space that's really at the far north end of the park. This is the monument sign, and again, the measurements are about 13 feet 3 inches by the time they got done framing it out, by 6 feet tall. And it sits 3 feet 3 inches off of the ground, so that's the ground clearance underneath, and that will be placing the planters around the sign, so it'll enclose it fully and sort of help then ground it and green it up a little bit. It's very plain right now. You can see the placement of the sign, so it's about 41 feet off of the roadway of Military Avenue. It's a very busy spot. You can still see it from the street, though. You can't miss it. These are some pictures, and I apologize for it being very sunny that day, but it's a great problem to have, unlike today. But you can see that the sign is very visible and very noticeable. The first picture is the view from Military Avenue. The second picture is if you are out on the baseball field looking in towards Military Avenue. These are some additional photos of the former chain link fence, and this is one of the issues that we'll have to discuss is, do we want a fence to be put back in there? There was word and concern that the neighbors had wanted a fence, and so our city manager actually went out and conducted some research with the neighbors, and he heard that they would like a fence to be put back in. And so he heard that feedback from a couple of people. We are wondering and looking for advice on the height of the chain link fence if we choose to put that in. It would be a vinyl coated, so a black vinyl coated chain link fence. And we could do a 6-foot or an 8-foot tall fence. So that would be something that I would look to bar. And if it sounds like we're not coming in with a formal plan, we're not. This is a collaborative process, which is a little unusual for our Board of Architectural Review, but this is a city project. So this is something that we're actually looking for you to help us input on design. So that's why we're coming with what plants would you like, what trees would you like, and what fence, if any, would you like. This is just an illustration of the 10-foot fence and what that would look like if we put that in front of it. That was, you can see over here on the left-hand side, the remnants of the 10-foot tall fence that was there. We could take that down lower to be an 8-foot tall fence, or we could take that down just a little bit above half to be a 6-foot tall fence. And we could decide, what this area is primarily used for, it's been explained to me, is that when there's a ball game going on out here in the field, if another team arrives for a game, they warm up over there. So they may throw balls around, and sometimes balls may escape, you know, because if you throw like me, they go all over before you start warming up. But the balls may escape, and so a fence might be a useful feature to have in that neighborhood. This is just an illustration of what some trees could look like. So having something that could grow to be a little taller. So these are going to shoot up significantly, and that would make the sign seem a lot smaller than by comparison. And we think that might help the scale. But then having a smaller, you know, more pedestrian level tree, something that would stay a little smaller and just bring it back down to earth again. So it's kind of moving the eye a little bit and helping the sign to blend in. These are some of the plant species, and these were included in your packet. We would also be open to additional species if you want, but we had envisioned something with low water use because we don't have water for that planting space. We will send a truck out to water. We do that to some of our parks, and we would certainly get the plants established, and if we had to continue watering, we would do that. But we had thought about something just low and keeping in scale, something low and spreading in the planter itself. And then for the trees on the side, we were just, and these are just random ideas, we were looking at something that would grow taller as being an evergreen, or some of these even in weeping form, if you like something like that. So we're a little open to what you might choose. We're really looking for feedback on this as an iterative process. And again, the species here were suggestions from staff for you, so that way you're not starting from scratch, but it's something like which types of trees would you like to see around the sign? And then what would you like to see underneath the sign? And then the issue of fencing. So I believe, let me just check my notes to make sure. Oh, there was one letter that came in about a neighbor concern wanting parking in the park. And that is something that does not happen on this park on the north side of the field. And the city would have extreme concerns about parking at that side because of the location of the field. So I'm going to flip back for a second so you can kind of just see the layout. You can see that the ball field is here, and if somebody hit the ball into left field, they would crack out windows and the city would be liable for that. So that's something that we really would frown upon, is parking on that side of the baseball field. So while that was suggested by a neighbor, we would decline that liability issue. I welcome any questions that you may have for staff.
Do you have any
I have a
questions?
question. Can you bring back to the red line, fence line?
Yes,
So what was the fence height before?
That was
10 feet.
Before
was-
10 feet?
It was
It was
10
really
feet,
The
right?
tall.
same location?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That wasn't tall enough. Actually, the ball went few times. I coached the Little League few times. And sometimes we do hit the ball for the kids, and that's, I was gonna suggest lower, but it was 10 feet,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Right. So one of the things that we found, that I found out, that was new to me, is that they had certain age groups there, and I don't
Yeah.
know the exact cutoff. I think it was up 14, up to age 14 before.
No, I think it's Mustang, which is, yeah, up to 14, I think so.
Yeah, and they were able to hit the ball farther, and my
Yeah.
Yeah, they
understanding
do,
is
once
that
in a while.
it's lowered now, so it's like
Yeah.
down to age 12.
Yeah.
So it is our hope that they're not power hitting that far. Some, you may still have some, but with the younger ages, we're hoping that it's less balls coming out so that an 8-foot fence.
Adults play there once in a while. I go there with my kids.
Right.
They're adult children, but I go out there once in a while,
Right.
once a year. You know, they do hit the ball high. So that same, you're suggesting same location?
The fence would be in the same location. It would
location.
be, yeah, it would be along the right-of-way, you know, so just towards the back of the sidewalk.
So how many feet back from the sidewalk?
It's right up against the sidewalk.
We can position that where you would like it to be. So if you want it right up against the sidewalk, that might be the best spot to catch the balls if
No.
they're going. if you're-
Actually, farther away is, no, actually, visually, it's nice to have a little bit more room rather than right next to the sidewalk though.
Right.
So it should be like, it was, how many feet you had before? You don't know?
Away from the sidewalk, that one I don't know offhand. I thought it was like right up against it from what I've seen.
It's right
Yeah.
up
Was it?
against it, because there's a
Yeah.
grade drop too.
Right, yeah, it's
So-
going downhill.
It's
Oh,
not
okay.
like it's
Yeah.
flat the whole way.
Mm.
There's a drop off to
Yeah.
get to the.
Probably
field
should have
level.
like a few feet before, away from
Yeah,
the
but
sidewalk.
you're gonna
though.
be, so you're just gonna be
Yeah.
lower.
Yeah,
Let me see if there was,
well, yeah.
So the fence will be 10 foot from whatever grade that is,
Yeah.
because it's gonna go
I
down.
guess, yeah.
yeah, these don't show it. There is a grade change.
There's a,
Right.
yeah.
Sounds to me like the
I
previous
was-
fence was.
I
Yeah,
was-
in these
Previous
you can
right
see
up
that it
against
was
the
right up against the
Yeah, that
sidewalk
was
here.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like 10 feet though.
It's high.
Yeah.
It was high.
It was 10 feet?
Yep.
When you walked by it, I
Yes.
was told it was very
It was
high.
very high.
Yeah. Okay. If it's a black vinyl, should be okay, right? It's not really, you know, a couple of feet won't make much difference. The thing that I was really surprised was, without coming, you know, the signage didn't come to the architectural review board. One day, boom, and it just, you mentioned the city has right to do that, but should come here first before they build a fence, I mean the signage. I'm not opposed to a sign, but it is huge.
Right, I agree, and I think that's why we're looking at the question of landscaping to help it build in the context. One of the reasons that it did not come to Bar, and I can tell you this now, is it was a surprise. So the mayor did not know about it. It was along with a surprise party for him, and it was actually unveiled at his surprise party. So if it would have gone to Bar, he would have known about it because he is a diligent follower of city government, and he would have known what you guys were working on, and the surprise would have been ruined.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it's just, you can't just do a surprise and boom, build something like that. And now we have to hide that big sign. That doesn't make sense.
Right, and I hear your point, and I will say there are things like the Laguna Grande park signs, you know, so we've been adding park signs in to identify our parks, just the named park signs, as we have money in the Parks and Rec area, their commission. And so they've been prioritizing which parks get those signs as well. So park naming signs are going in on a fairly frequent basis. And this was just viewed in the light of being another park naming sign, and it was made to be consistent with that. But I hear your message loud and clear. You are not going unheard, Maury.
So now it's done.
Right.
Okay. So removing is not an option.
Nope. It's in with 3 foot, oh my goodness, that thing is anchored. It's 3 foot diameter concrete with a lot of rebar around it. Each of those posts are heavily anchored.
Well, I have a hard time swallowing this.
Yeah.
Now it's humongous outer portion sign is built. Now we have to hide it. Now we gotta spend more money. It doesn't make sense. I'm not opposed to the sign itself, but idea that, you know, the surprise, okay, but didn't go through the right channel and build it. So now we have to hide it. This doesn't make sense at all. I mean, I'm not opposed to the signage, but this is so huge. I've been hearing from other people, nearby, people passing by, hey, what's going on? And I'm sure nobody's opposed to the signage. That's huge. So if it's possible, should be moved a little bit more to the building, so it won't be standing alone by itself.
That's not possible.
I
That is
think-
just not possible.
You can move it.
The right landscaping, I think it will.
No, cut it down, move it, set another post. That can be done.
Well, that wasn't what I had agendized on the work. Tonight, we're looking for not repositioning. I would have to come back then with another staff report on the new proposed location for it. And we would end up waiting. But right now, what I had proposed and what the city has proposed is for me to come here and ask you for the landscaping around it. And I would disagree respectfully with your use of the word hide the sign. It's not to hide it, it's to help the context of the sign. And it's very much in line with what the Board of Architecture Review does all the time. When people bring plans before you, you move roof lines around so they look more aesthetically pleasing in our community. You move trash enclosures around so they look more aesthetically pleasing in our community. And this is yet another way of making a sign more aesthetically pleasing in our community. You are viewed as our experts in that. And so we are turning to you for your expertise on this. So I'm hoping that you can give us guidance tonight.
I love trees.
Right.
Well, it just, city have to be example. City has the right to build a sign, okay. City doesn't have right to put any sign for any business. Every citizen, business owner have to present signage before we approve. So city have to do the same. City just did it, that's not right.
She's already explained.
I know that,
Right.
so I-
Can do it.
how do you feel, you guys?
It is in the municipal code, though, in code 1762.030B5. The city code allows the city to do that. Right or wrong, it's in the city's municipal code.
Okay.
All right, so you would like our input prior to having opening it up for public comment?
However you would like to, if you would like the public comment, and then I'm available.
I think let's do that first.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this matter? Please step forward and state your name.
Hello, my name is Undine Lauer, UNDINELAUER. I used to have your job, so I know how hard that is. Thank you for letting me speak, and I just wanted to mention that Mr. Malin kindly came out and did speak to us. There are a couple factual errors in the staff report. The sign actually went up in October, not in December. And I sent Mr. Malin an email outlining several of my concerns and several of the concerns of the neighbors. So I think the staff report refers to one main concern, but there were actually several. And if I may submit this for the record, that outlines some of the concerns. So that picture is the view from inside my house. From every window of my house, that's the view. The sign is huge. Since Mr. Malin kindly met with us, the holidays occurred. I had over 50 visitors. Every single one of them had a negative comment about what a huge, ugly sign it was. Too big and ugly were the two most common words, and someone said, another Seaside resident said, quite hideous. One of our concerns, and Mr. Malin did say that we could consider moving the sign, and he also used the words, or try to hide it. So he did use those words as well. And I know he's here now. And one of our concerns is for the safety, and even with the 10-foot fence, balls are often in my yard. The park is designed for 10 to 12-year-olds. Many adults use that park, and they're hitting the balls from home plate. They're going over the 10-foot fence. Now there's no fence at all. I've been a longtime volunteer for Seaside Pony, and practice is going to start soon, and I'm very concerned for the safety of the community, cars going by, people coming into my home, now balls. There's no protection now at all. So the fence definitely needs to go up soon, and 10 feet is not too low, because there are already balls coming into the yard, even with the 10-foot fence. The area for the players, planting trees, our Seaside Pony program is already impacted by the lack of fields. And every space available for those kids is necessary. Planting trees to hide the sign is going to impact us even more. One of the things we had suggested was moving the sign over to where the
Concession area?
the concession area, or just move the sign. No offense to Mr. Rubio, I know he's done a lot of years of service, but it's too big. There was no community input. There was no opportunity for the community to, there was no notice about it. There was no opportunity for the community to put in their input or suggestions, and it's just too big. It's like a billboard right in front of my house, and every window of my house looks right at it. So the safety concerns, the noticing, the aesthetics, those are my biggest concerns.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Darrell Lauer. I also live at 1565 Military Avenue. Again, this is a picture from my front window of the sign. I would also like to, I was as the vice president of Seaside Pony Baseball for 5 years, put a lot of service in. I now coach high school ball, and I can't say enough about the field and how important the field is to the youth. But I guess I wanted to question, and I read through the statement, and by the code that they have the right to put the sign up is correct, but I was wondering whether whether public funds was being used, because in the very beginning right here, it asked that Seaside Municipal Code said public finance projects administered by the city requires architectural review, which this sign didn't go in front of you guys. So that's a question. I'm not opposed to the sign. Ralph came out and threw the first ball out there at many of our tournaments, and he's a neighbor of ours. He lives down the street. But I think relocating the sign is the better option. Underneath the scoreboard, there's plenty, everybody can see it. So I would like to maybe staff could take in consideration the amount of money they're going to spend on landscaping, watering, irrigating versus just moving it, and weigh those two costs. And then last, the fence was 10 feet. It was there for a reason, to keep balls out of people's houses, the safety for kids. Just a 10-foot fence back would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none, we'll close it to public comment. Could you help with the comment in regards to public funds putting up the sign, and if that relates to this code?
Sure. What I'm going to do for right now is I'm going to ask our city manager, who is conveniently here, Craig Malin, to come down and say a few things.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Gloria. Craig Nealon, City Manager. The matter of were public funds used for the sign? Public funds were used to purchase the wood for the sign. All the labor was donated.
So was it donated?
Yes.
Yes,
Money.
I was the labor, so I'm
Okay.
quite confident it was donated. And the sign, we met the very nice neighbors across the way. The sign was, I'm sorry, I was working on something else in City Hall, so I don't know if the derivation of the sign was discussed. It was a surprise. It was intended to be a
Correct.
surprise. Otherwise, we obviously would have had community discussion prior to it. So it was a surprise, and it was placed in a manner, and there was a fence prior to it that was fairly unsightly. I think that would be a good way to describe it. So the fence got taken down. We've had a nice discussion about putting up a better fence, so we're happy to do that. We had the discussion about placement of the sign, and it can be moved. There's nothing, the phraseology is normally it's not set in concrete. It in fact is set in concrete, but it can be moved. The placement was meant to both be visible and from the stands. So we can move it if that meets people's desires. My recollection when I left the meeting was we were going to leave it where it was, and we were going to landscape it, not to hide it, I want to be clear, but to give it scale and to beautify it. The area is, rather, it was previously rather unkempt, and it had a rusting chain link fence. As a long-serving baseball coach myself, I understand that space can be used for warming kids up, and thus the direction I offered staff was to present a choice of whether or not we want to more fully landscape that space, or do we want to sort of concentrate the landscaping near the signs such that it provides a sign scale. I don't want to suggest that if we move the sign, we won't landscape it. We're happy to do that too. Neighborhood supports. The very nice neighbors also asked if we could put a baiting cage there. And we will be conducting a more robust community discussion about that. So I appreciate that that it was a surprise. It was meant to be a surprise. It was a rather nice surprise too. I'll be happy to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you. Comments, discussion? I know how you feel. Lonnie?
Can I say it again?
No? Has it changed?
Was
Yes,
there,
anything new?
was there a reason the sign is that size?
Yes, again, the sign is double-sided. It's meant to be read from 150 odd feet or so away on the other side.
Okay.
I'll also say, we had a discussion both internally and with the neighbors about whether or not we want to maybe put a taller netting to keep the baseballs from leaving the field and going into the street and into the yard. That was thought not to be a good idea because it was visually obtrusive. So, we're trying to get to something that is an improvement to the neighborhood and appropriately recognizes a long-serving public servant.
Thank you. And the batting cages would go where the sign, ideally, where would the batting cages go if you guys did go down that?
Again, as is, and I'm doing this from memory, and you can, okay. Here we go.
I think lengthwise along right there was what, as Seaside Pony Baseball, we had actually talked about putting batting cages there, plans were in, of course. I don't think the neighbors are opposed to the noise. Again, it's for the youth, it really is. I mean, it was a money thing that just didn't exist at the time when I was there. I don't know, I can't speak for right now.
Yes,
So it would
again,
be
in terms of.
this way versus the other way, more in the corner and the other, by the
It would be perpendicular to the fence?
No, it would be parallel to the street.
parallel fence, yeah.
Okay.
So it probably, so it would probably be here.
In between the
Right.
existing fence and the 10-foot fence? Or, I'm sorry, in between the sign and the fence? Or,
We don't have a site plan. It would be, it wouldn't be in front of the sign. It would be, start over here and run parallel here. So batting, for those who don't know batting cages are typically 70 or 80 feet long. They are typically 10 to 12 feet high. They are typically 10 feet wide at a minimum. So in terms of being visually obtrusive, that's a fairly significant, that's a far more significant addition to this area than the sign. Again, Seaside wants to be supportive, the city of Seaside wants to be supportive of youth recreation, and a batting cage is something that we can do, but it is something that, given the noise associated with it, some people don't like the thwack of a bat or the ping of a bat. We want to have a conversation with the neighbors about that. these neighbors right across the street are okay with it. And that sort of came up at the end of our conversation, which somewhat surprised me because we were having a conversation about something that was visually obtrusive, and then I was asked about, can we put a batting cage there? I was like, if the community wants it, sure.
There's a batting cage at Soper Field,
Okay.
and that's right along the roadway, you can see it.
Okay.
And again, batting cages are typically pipe structures with netting.
Okay.
Okay, so obviously, city made a mistake, taking down the fence and putting a humongous sign, didn't come to us. Regardless it's on code or not, should come to us. And the city made two mistakes. Landscaping around the sign is not gonna hide the sign. Based on the picture there, couple residents, 2-3 residents, see that no matter what you do, sign is huge, and there's no tree around the area there. So you're looking at planting 2 trees or 4 trees, it's even advertising. Here's a sign, here's a green trees. So it's not gonna sign, it's not gonna hide anything. So the solution should be to be either take it down or remove it, relocate it. I'm not, again, I like to see the sign, but it's too huge. So either relocate or reduce the sign. And also, when it comes to the fence, if they, 12 feet, maybe okay. 10 feet is okay. But the money should, taken down, the money should really, before you do that, should really consider, as it is now, I'm really concerned about all the landscaping in the city. Especially I mentioned many times about city's main street, Bremen Boulevard, Aegis landscaping just completely destroyed. It's just a sad scene. So the money, the fund, I would say misuse of the fund to remove the fence and so forth.
I heard that the fence was not very stable, that's why they took it down.
It was rusted.
Fence can be enforced, doesn't have to be taken down.
If it's a liability.
Again,
Approach?
The fence was hideous, and thus, hideous. It was a rusting, fairly large chain link fence. Mistake might be a word. We had a discussion at the staff level about improving this area, about improving it. That was our goal. And that discussion led to the fence, really unbeknownst to me, being removed. When the fence was removed, I said, well, okay, now we can make the fence better. The fence was, two things. It was both rusting, as I recall it, and was not visually attractive. Did it stop some baseballs? I'm sure it did. I think the issue, we had this discussion, the issue fundamentally the issue with baseballs is they could make it over the fence based on who was hitting. So intrusive. So we had a discussion about how high should the fence be, and putting the fence back and putting a new fence back and one that is, black vinyl clad and is just a much nicer fence. Still cost effective, but just much nicer. So again, our goal was to improve the situation. And we had the little, once in a lifetime a surprise for someone that we thought was a nice thing to do.
Thank you.
Right.
that was a chain link fence, was galvanized fence.
Okay. So what are you proposing, or are you proposing?
Either remove to different location or reduce the size of the sign.
And you're good with having a 10-foot chain link fence there?
I think it's okay. I think all the neighbors are supporting because the ball does go through there over the fence, and that, if it does, city will be liable, right? So it should be, I think it should be either 10 foot or even 12 feet.
Okay, I think 12 foot's a little too tall, but
Okay, well,
what about the landscaping around the sign? If it were relocated, do you have any comments about the types of landscaping elements around the sign?
I like the look of the palm next to it from the picture, but obviously closer next to the sign and different.
this is a Cody line. Cody line takes this size, takes about 20 years to grow this size. It's not available.
There's another type of palm that doesn't grow so
So
tall.
they're suggesting Cody line. I grow Cody line. I grow hundreds of them.
Yeah.
This is not the, this won't do the job.
Hmm.
So with all the proposed planting that they suggest, do you have something else?
Well, first of all, before even spearing, covering around the plants, the sign have to be relocated. That's how I feel.
All right. So you're not gonna comment about the landscaping until you know where the sign's gonna go?
Right. I mentioned that as it is now, cities have a hard time keeping up what we have. A Fremont plant along the median area, both sides, I would say 90% of plants are dead or dying. So city have a hard time keeping up what we have. So why do we need to do another planting? Takes more labor, takes more water. I just don't understand.
Fun?
Yes. Seems like there are priorities. I do like the 10-foot fence. I think that should be a priority. So, other than that, I like the look of a palm next to the, maybe not that specific type.
How do you
but-
feel the signage itself?
So I haven't actually driven by, but I trust the person who lives there. So,
The picture?
however, in Foresight, if there is a batting cage going in that you, go ahead.
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
sorry,
we
yeah.
cannot have public comment. That was done.
Sorry.
Bonnie.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so, so it seems to me that moving, if it is an option, would make the neighborhood happy, which is always a nice thing. Surprises are nice things as well. But I definitely think that the 10-foot fence going back is a priority.
All right, do you hear a motion?
So I'd like to make a motion that the big sign need to be relocated, so it won't create any unhappy neighbor around the park, and they have to come back to us.
Is there other neighbors that are, if it is relocated, they're going to have the same situation?
Well, see, they have to figure out.
So maybe a better idea would be size,
That's option, yeah, absolutely. So either resize it or relocate.
Yes. One more comment.
I'll say that resizing the sign is well, moving it's a significant undertaking. Resizing it is starting from scratch, which, you know, is not impossible. So the question about relocation, and unfortunately we have these boxes here that, I don't know if we can pull up Google Maps or something. So when you say relocate, So there's a scoreboard here. And and this is from memory, so, you know, if I'm wrong, please correct me. The sign is roughly akin to the size of the scoreboard. Okay, I'm getting nods, okay. So we could potentially put the sign below the scoreboard as an idea.
I think that's
And whether or not, you know, that fits neatly within it, or, you know, we have to tweak something up a bit is a question. But when you say relocation, I just want to, I don't want to guess at where, and we've noticed everyone around for this meeting, correct? You received a notice, right? Okay. So, you know, we could slide it, you know, a little bit over here.
That'd be good location.
Okay.
Everybody will see it. Will come to baseball game, they can see it. That's not gonna be it's not gonna interfere any of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 homes.
Well, again, you know,
People will
there's,
be happier.
and that's great. You know, our goal is to make people, our goal as a city is to make people happier. So, you know, again, I wish we could see that exact location, but I think it would fit over here,
Good.
if you can. If we could maybe look at a Google map image of it, that might show it. Yeah, because we could also slide it the other way. But there's, again, and there's a sign there, and a building there as well. But we are also trying to establish some separation between the sign naming the park as Mets Park with the field.
Right.
So. Can then go to. Now I blow it up. There you go, okay. So, I mean, if I get this right, so this would be the scoreboard. So, it might be, I'm just making this up, I'm not just, the problem is the scoreboard directly orients in this direction,
Right.
right? It's for people sitting here to see this. So it would be difficult,
the street view, right?
you know, for any street view. So
But if it were further to the left of the scoreboard?
here?
No, left, on the left side of the scoreboard, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Here, or here,
Yeah,
Right, so
on either side.
over here would be okay,
Right, because then you still have the backside be visible from the street.
sure. Yeah, and what's the back and what's the front was,
Yeah.
depends on,
If that's the case, people can sitting down here, people can see, big sign, doesn't matter, they can see well.
sure. So, I mean, that's completely workable. And I would just ask, you know, if the motion can be interpreted to be, you know, within the vicinity of this, because there might be a, you know, a power line or something running out to here or somewhere.
Utility.
Yeah, so we have to figure that out, but we would move it from here over to here.
Okay.
And again, landscaping is not an either or in my estimation. City's not giving up on landscaping, generally.
All right,
Thank you.
I'm going to open it back up to public comment. If there's anyone that would like to speak in regards to relocation of the sign, please come forward.
Thank you, I'm Dean Lauer again. Having the sign with the scoreboard would be great, and we wouldn't even ask that there be any landscaping at that point, because, again, the landscaping dies, it costs more money to maintain, but it would not be right in front of our house. So we would be acceptable if it was with the scoreboard. And I I understand, it's a pain to move it, but it wasn't noticed, and it shouldn't have gone up the way it did. So I wouldn't even, the whole thing about landscaping came up when we talked about hiding the sign. And if I would remove that request for landscaping from my original request if it were moved to the scoreboard side.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No? All right. No. All right, we'll close for public comment.
Okay, so
Let me just ask staff, are we okay with the general relocation of the sign in the vicinity of the existing scoreboard?
Absolutely, and I just want to say thank you so much to the neighbors for their patience as we go through this process, and my apologies to the board. Again, it's a once-in-a-lifetime surprise for somebody, and we picked a location, and we can certainly move it.
All right, thank you. All right,
so
thanks, Gloria.
So just being practical staff, as I understand the direction, you're instructing us to move it. There would not be landscaping, and we are to add a 10-foot fence.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so,
I'd like to make a move to motion that either side of, relocate the size, current existing sign, either side of scoreboard, and 10-foot vinyl fence to be installed around the Military Avenue. Visually prefer couple of feet away from the sidewalk. Do we need to discuss about that, location-wise?
the only thing that I would suggest is if the grade drops off considerably, then you've just lost the height of the 10-foot fence. However,
Yeah.
because you're going down, you're making it lower,
Right,
more balls will
right.
come over.
A couple of feet makes it not much
And
difference.
if it's going
depends.
downhill,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it will be a trash collector
Oh,
right
yes.
along there. So,
Brilliant.
Yeah, but still, if it's a trash case, it's gonna correcting anyway along the.
yeah, but you just wouldn't, if you just, it just wouldn't be visible as much as if it were right up against
So
the
the need
sidewalk, because
before-
you'd be going downhill.
I think
Right.
functionally it needs to be, sounds like it needs to be on the sidewalk or
So,
according to functionality here. Otherwise, maybe the fence could be taller, maybe depending on the grade.
Okay,
but-
that's not a big issue. Okay, so let me rephrase again. So, 10-foot vinyl fence to be installed along the sidewalk. The exact location can be determined by city.
okay, is there a second or a comment?
Second,
All right, it's been moved and second. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed. Do I have the little thing about the, if you will
Appeal.
appeal, you have the little card? We don't have the little card?
Huh?
If anyone wishes to appeal, you have seven calendar days and see the city clerk. Got it. All right. Thank you for coming. Any reports from board members?
None.
Any reports from staff?
First of all, you might notice that there's a new name up on your
Oh,
your
yes, I
site. Yes.
just noticed that.
So Lisa Ann Sawney was one of your new board members who was appointed by the mayor. So the council chose her for your commission, and we hope that she'll be joining you for one of our upcoming meetings. You may have heard her name. She did run for mayor of the city of Seaside. And she does attend council meetings a lot. So if you attend council meetings or if you watch those on TV, if they're exciting about your TV watching like I am, yeah, you'd see her. That's one of the things. And then just a reminder, there's a council meeting tomorrow night, and they are looking still to fill the Kayla Jones seat. And there were 13 applicants, and they had their presentations,
13
so you can, 13 applicants,
That's great.
right? So that's pretty good in the city of Seaside, that people want to actually serve on council. So it was a a nice opportunity. There was a variety of applicants, both in age, race, you know, all sorts of demographics, so it was very pleasant to see that diversity in our city. And tomorrow, what they're going to be doing is the council will start the debating about who they think should fill the seat, and they're voting on how they will choose who's going to be that person. So I encourage you to either join the council tomorrow night or watch as you can, so you can see.
Is there a
if
live
they'll-
feed?
There
Okay,
should be a live
perfect.
feed, right? And make sure you just check a couple of different methods. I've been at home and sometimes they don't always work, but there's different places you can click, so be persistent in your attempts to watch.
Okay.
So who
And it
get
is an
to-
important thing at our city.
Who get to vote?
The council will vote on that.
So
So the-
7 people?
No.
There's only 4 members of
4 now.
council
4.
right
Oh,
now.
that's right, okay.
Right. And so we need them to actually come to a consensus, so 3 of them will agree at some
Okay.
point. So my understanding is they're going to narrow it down to 8 candidates first, and then they'll be voting people to move forward, and it'll be narrowed down. So it should be exciting, some excitement for Seaside. But one person made a very nice public comment, and they said, this is an opportunity for somebody who is not a politician to be appointed to our council. So you think about that. When you choose to run for office, you're making a lot of your life very public, and these people are private citizens, and they've chosen to go through this process. So we could end up with somebody, you know, with a unique background to fill this seat. So it really is an exciting opportunity for the city, and I encourage you to remind people, because I know serving on a board and commission, people look to you and they say, what's going on in Seaside? Please remind them of this opportunity tomorrow so that they should watch and see what our city holds.
I have one question.
Mhm.
The new board member, do you, what kind of background does she have?
I believe she has management and HR background.
Okay,
She
so
has
no building construction type
Not-
background?
Not a professional, right,
Okay.
not a professional architect or PE or anything.
All right.
Correct. She has been involved with park design and park aesthetics in her neighborhoods. So some of our parks have like neighborhoods that adopt their parks.
Mhm.
She was, my understanding is she was one of the leaders of those in her neighborhood.
Okay.
And so she's been involved with a lot of the park aesthetics.
Okay, great, thank
Mhm.
you. All right, adjournment?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
The city cannot appeal, okay?
Again, I want to apologize for not coming back. A very unique set of circumstances. We wanted it to be a surprise, and it was. It was a very top secret.
Chair can say opinion, right? You don't say
I did
word.
because it's like everybody had what they were gonna say. I'm fine with the direction you were going in.
But if I was sitting out there, I would wonder if the chair is allowed to say her opinion or
Yeah,
not.
Ken, you remember Ken used to
Well,
always.
yeah, I know, that's why I thought
Chime in.
you didn't understand.
What?
You asked me an opinion, but you never say your opinion.
I did, you're right, because I just wanted this thing to go along. I didn't have anything else to add that wasn't already said.
Used to be like a Kenny say what he says, everybody tend to go along with him.
Yes, I miss him. Oh, I'm not gonna, yeah, I wanted to hear what you guys have to say.
I want to hear what you feel too.
Yeah, but it's like,
With only 3 people, it's important to hear your opinion.
yeah, but you stated it very well, and Bonnie was.
But I have no idea what you,
And Mike-
you might think I'm crazy or what, you know? I'm usually a pushover. I don't, I support.
You spoke up.
I know, but I was hoping you would support me. You didn't say a word, so